Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of The Heroes, Joe's second standalone, and the next First Law entry. We cover new hands, old hands, and everyone serves. So let's get started. As usual, we want to thank you all for your support. This episode has been recorded 2 days after we recorded the previous one because of travel plans coming up. Harrison, you're traveling, right?
I am traveling. I think
Yeah.
you're traveling as well, aren't you, Jeffrey?
Yes, the last week of March.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
that's next week. So good.
yeah, this one will release on the
28th.
No,
or the 4th.
the 4th.
The last one released on the 28th.
Yeah, yep.
You know that though, if you're listening to this. So
Yes. For us, we're talking in
so
the
you know,
future.
this is at least after the 4th of
Yeah.
But no, I think you're right, because obviously it's going to be a bit of a difference from last episode, which was me being very, very drunk and you guys putting up with it.
We talk about the difference.
Yeah, when we record on
I'm
Friday,
not drunk.
when we record on Friday night, it's practically Saturday in the wee hours of the early morning for George, and he gets hammered.
He at
Love
least
it.
enjoys himself.
That's right.
You're saying you don't enjoy yourself?
That was the joke, yes.
Well, we just want to continue to thank you all for your continued devotion, and continue following us on our social media platforms and our YouTube page. Speaking of our YouTube page, in this episode, we are going to cover a chapter that prompted a certain video of George's, and we'll talk about it. But make sure you go and give that a listen if you haven't. If you don't know anything about it, you'll know by this chapter that we cover. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next segment, which is our community interaction segment. And really, that's just we're just talking about the memeing every chapter.
Yeah.
Join our Discord channel. To do that, you can just email us, and we'll send you a link. Right, George?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, email us, circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com, or send a message on any of the social media profiles, and we'll probably see it after maybe a week or two. I don't know.
I try to read those quickly. I try.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just keep up with the meme in every chapter. There's not a lot to say, obviously, because we did a little one last episode.
Yes.
A couple days
It's only
ago.
been a day or two, yeah. So
Yeah. So okay. So we'll go on and jump right into our first chapter read through, which is New Hands, and we start off with the letter. I shall read this letter.
I'm curious to see what kind of voice you're going to be doing for this character.
Hey, what does Tani sound like?
Yeah, what kind of scummy, villainy, what kind of scallywag are you going to sound like?
Just don't do your Cockney accent, or has it gotten better?
Try it out.
I was just gonna read it as a Jersey boy. That's it. Dear Mistress Worth, with the greatest regret, I must inform you of the death of your son in action on the battlefield near Osrong. It is usual for the commanding officer to write such letters, but I requested the honor as I knew your son personally, and have but rarely in a long career served with so willing, pleasant, able, and courageous a comrade. He embodied all those virtues that one looks for in a soldier. I do not know if it could provide you with any satisfaction in the face of a loss so great, but it is not stretching the truth to say that your son died a hero. I feel honored to have known him. With the deepest condolences, your obedient servant, Corporal Tunney, standard bearer of His Majesty's 1st Regiment, Queen of the Andals, Roynar and the First Men. Mother of chains. Breaker of chains, mother to all children.
Well, for him.
You know what? He's mother of chains. Fuck it, he's the mother of chains.
Yeah. Veteran of the what is the siege? Veteran of the siege of Aurillac.
Aurillac.
Made sergeant, then made corporal.
Survivor of a tribunal.
Survival of many horrors.
Which I would like to point out that there was no wrongdoing found.
And I'm quoting the tribunal, sir. And then I like how after that Tunney sighs. he folds the letter very carefully and pressed 2 neat creases into it because it might be the worst letter that the poor woman ever got. He owed it to her to put a decent crease in the damn thing. He put it in his jacket next to Mistress Klages, and then he starts writing a letter to Mistress Leatherlicker, Ladder Rubber.
But you
Same
know
thing.
what? You know what I like about this, even though it is the same thing. He does spell the name correctly,
He
which
spells the
kind of
name
makes me
correctly.
sad.
He takes, like he says, it's normally the commanding officer, which I bet would be Colonel Valamir, right?
Or Forrest, or
Or
yeah, one of
Forrest.
them. Well, no, you're right. The officer would be Valamir. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's cool that he does do this. Like this is his his secret his secret act that he does. He talks about how if when Yoke comes around, because Yoke's like Corporal Tunney, and Corporal Tunney at this point, not Corporal Tunney, Yoke, Private Yoke is like he's a veteran now. He's used to it. He's used to being in the army, and he covers the letter that he's writing because he says if this got out, it could ruin his reputation. Uh,
I love that Tunney's just really, he's just a big softy deep down, you know. You want to make
really
sure
is.
that these people have some nice thoughts about their dead son.
Yeah, and you think about it. I mean, we saw him lose, like first first over the fucking stream. Come on, you bastards! Waving the standard. He was hyped. So I think he makes a great soldier in like actual war, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
He embodies all those things that you might expect from a soldier, but it's like it's those moments of it's downtime, right? Where he's just a scallywag, a scoundrel, robs.
Yeah, I like how I totally agree. Like he has the heart for it. He's got the experience for it. Like he's not just some dunt. He actually does. He's a person. He does care. Like we're reminded, like with a lot of characters, like he has this Costco type vibe where he's all laissez-faire and like it doesn't matter. Oh, that guy died, all that stuff. But he just has been in it long enough that he is now in the mindset of like he knows how to compartmentalize. And yeah, he's a
Mhm,
scumbag, but he's
mhm.
not just a scumbag. Joe's always so good at reminding us about those things.
Yeah, and he's not. We say scumbag. We say that with like jest because compared to other people in the first law, dude's a great guy, stand up guy.
Yeah. Oh, he doesn't outright murder anyone, and he's quite
Right.
upset when
Yes.
people do outright get murdered. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Exactly.
think you're right. Actually, he's probably the most morally upright character in the series.
Yeah, he might be. He got mad that Kliega died with the bottles of brandy, and then he robbed an old northerner. But other than that, guy was cool. He was chill. Oh man. And then they have a conversation, him and Yoke, about like why they even bother coming up here if they just ended up negotiating a peace where maybe things just don't really change. And then he's like, well, wars don't often change much. A bit here, a bit there, but overall there have to be better ways for men to settle their differences though. So and then he goes, war is damned uncomfortable work for minimal rewards, and it's the soldiers who always bear the worst. And then Yoke says, well, why be a soldier then? And Tunney doesn't say anything for a moment. He goes, best job in the world, isn't it? And then, Sergeant Forrest comes, strolling over, from a group of people. And Tunney is like, what the hell? And because he says, when First Sergeant Forrest smiles, there's really good news. And then Joke does have a good point where he says, when is there good news on the way? He's like, yeah.
He's learning.
Yeah, that's true. And so Forrest informs them that, they're getting their horses back. I like how Tony goes, just in time to ride them back the way we came. It's like, let it never be said that His August Majesty does not provide his loyal soldiers with everything needful. And they're pulling out in the morning. They're heading to Uffrith in a nice warm boat. And then Tony's like, oh, yeah, it's nice. Gonna go home, huh? And then Forrest smiles even more and goes, sorry to disappoint. We're going to Steria. It's like, fuck, Steria. So we're gonna go to beautiful Westport. crossroads of the world to stand alongside their bold allies in Sapani and take righteous arms against that notorious she-devil Monscato Mercato, the snake of talons. She is by all reports a fiend in human form, an enemy to freedom, and the greatest threat to ever to face the Union.
It does have that rhythm to it, I've got to say.
Since Black Dow, Tunney remarks, who we made pace with yesterday. It's funny how, so I thought, so I guess, yeah, when Monza ascends to, the throne, you could say, only a couple city-states, like, were allied with her. Everyone else kind of rose up in rebellion, or, like, they're like, fuck this bitch, right?
I mean, we always knew that Sapani was relatively neutral anyway.
Yeah, until,
when it came to that kind of thing.
Until, what was his name?
Rogon.
No, Ario died.
Oh, so yeah.
And so in Cardati's House of Leisures and Simple Pleasures, and men falling out of windows. So obviously that news is like, oh, great. And then this is where Forrest lets, at least Tunney knows this, but when he says Marshal Mitterick's just the man to make them quake, Yolk is like, what happened to Croy? And Forrest goes, how many have you outlasted now? He goes, 8 Lord Marshals. Thinks of Frengen, Altmoyer, Krepsky, who's the short one, which, little unnecessary to point that out as a fellow short person. Then there's another Frengen, and then who they
I
call...
like how it's the Forrest is like, the other Frengen.
A notable fool, even for Commander-in-Chief. Then there was Varuz, Burr, then West, who they remarked was a good man, gone too early like most good men, and they had Croy. Now, I want to point something out. There's sometimes there's like at least 2 Lord Marshals on at a time, right?
Yes.
Because
we had Varuz and Burr
at the same time.
Yeah, so
it might just depend on who's been assigned to lead the army and who's there to advise.
Yeah, so there seems to be that there's one at home and then one abroad. That seems to be the vibe, because that's what it is in Age of Madness as well. There's one out there in the field, and then there's one at home.
Gotcha. And so, Tunney's starting to come around to the idea of Sapani. He's like, well...
Good weather.
Good weather. Excellent weather, Forrest says. And he goes, and Tunney, I hear they have the best bloody whores, which at Circle the World, we call them ladies of the night.
We are respectful.
And, Forrest goes, yeah, they've been mentioned once or twice. Mm-hmm. And then I like how he says 2 things to look forward to, which is 2 more than you get in the north. But Forrest is still smiling, bigger than ever. And he goes, in the meantime, since your details stand so sadly reduced, here's another. And Tunney goes, oh, no. And Forrest says, oh, yes, up you come, lads. And here they come, 4 new recruits, fresh off the boat from Midderland.
This is another bit of Joe's fantastic symmetry here. It's exactly the same speech from the start of the book. Pretty much exactly the same interaction, and the chapter's got the same name as well. Or is it the opposite? Is it this one Old Hands where the first one was New Hands? I can't recall.
I forget, actually. Maybe New Recruits, maybe?
I think it's Recruits is the name of the chapter.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But there is an Old Hands and a New Hands in the beginning.
No, you're right. New Hands is a Beck chapter.
Right.
And then...
Yeah, Old Hands is the one where he gets... It's Tunney's first chapter.
Okay, it is. My bad. Okay.
So yeah, it's Old Hands and then New Hands. So I like that from Joe. He's always good at that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. He is. And I guess we would be remiss if we did not relay the speech that Forrest gives. Tunney and Yolk, they both shrug and they share a flask, the flask that Tunney has that used to be Yolk's. And Forrest says, boys, this here is the famous Corporal Tunney, one of the longest-serving non-commissioned officers in General Felnig's division. A veteran of the Stark Land Rebellion, the Gurkish War, the last Northern War, the Siege of Adwa, the recent climactic Battle of Osrung, and a quantity of peacetime soldiering that would have bored a keener mind to death. He has survived the runs, the rot, the grip, the autumn shudders, the caresses of northern winds, the buffets of southern women, thousands of miles of marching, many years of His Majesty's rations, and even a tiny bit of actual fighting to stand or sit before you now. And Tunney just settles back into the hammock and he closes his eyes. He's like, "Fuck this," and that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
I think this is a fantastic send off to Tunney here.
Mhm.
Obviously, he doesn't really fucking do anything in this book except lose those 3 recruits and then charge at no one. Which is just
lose bottles of brandy. Let's not forget.
exactly, and it's just the end, the great end to that arc of the boredom of war and
Mhm.
all the things that you don't really see in the war films.
Mhm.
So I think that's fantastic. I'm gonna give it a 7 and a knuckle.
Ooh, okay. Harrison.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that it is so cool to see how, like I mentioned earlier, the Tunney aspects of seeing how he's he's more than just a scallywag.
Mhm.
But I do think it's ultimately funny how they have it's just another wartime for him. Tony's said this 1,000 times. We've seen him at the beginning of the battle. We're seeing him at the end of the battle. He's pretty much completely unchanged, static character. He's not swayed by events, but as you can see here, it's just the same shit over and over again to him. So
Mhm.
I think that is done really well. And also, side note, I really like how Yoke survived. That's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
At least one.
The fact that he did survive and is also like his little apprentice, how he's learning to say the same things that Tunney is.
Mhm.
It's in a way, it's very wise of Yoke to be like Yoke is definitely more of a scumbag, as we will see eventually, than Tunney is. But I just really like. I agree. This is a good send-off for Tunney and a good wrapping up of every war film or movie or book. There's always an aspect of like, all right, on to the next conflict, and I think I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 9 for that.
Nice. Wow. I'm just gonna go just because it's short. I'm just gonna go a little bit lower, just a little bit. 6 and a knuckle. It's a good chapter. I agree with the both of you that it's a very fine, very nice, very fitting send off for our boy Corporal Tunney, who we will see in the future. We will see in the future, but uh, he's one of our favorite characters because he funny, cynical, but actually like deep down he has moments of just like of pure belief of in something, an ideal, which is standard
Yes.
bearer of the First Regiment, and he takes his duty seriously. Don't fuck with him in that standard. I bet you if Calder would have stolen his standard, I bet you Tony would have lost his shit.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, 6 and a knuckle for me. Very good chapter. Love it. But yeah, so let's move on to our next segment. This is our best meme of the week. Georgie boy, that's a you. Take it away.
So it creates a Bigfoots again. It's
Oh,
been very
there
active.
we go.
This person
Nice, love that.
making some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is the scene from Severance where they're dancing and Milchick is I don't know what to call him. He's chilling. And it's Khalil here after hearing Baez lost the Union.
It's a great meme.
It's
A great one.
brilliant.
Love it. I
A
fucking
good
love it.
show as well. It's a good show.
It's
It's
a very
good.
good show. Yes, yes.
That is
I
exactly the vibe. If you see that episode, that is exactly what I imagine how that would turn out.
Khalil's just busting it down. So good. So good. Oh man, that was a good one. And thank you, crates of Bigfoots. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But yes, please continue to make more memes. We love it. Obviously, it it brings us all together, right? It ties the fandom together. Just the memeing.
In fact, meme culture is what kept this fandom alive.
That's exactly it. Mhm. So, we'll move on to our next chapter read through, which is, funny enough, Old Hands. And this one's a pretty quick one. Guess who it is? It's our boy Beck, Red Beck, and he made it back home near sunset, and everything is the same, but everything looks so much more better to it's much more beautiful. He appreciates it now compared to before, where he was a miserable little kid. Well,
Yeah.
teenager, I guess you could say. But but as he gets here, he looks that he doesn't think that that people might have left, right? His cot is packed away. He thinks, oh shit, what if they all just packed up and they left? But then he heard like the sound of an axe splitting logs. So he goes back outside, and his mother was just over the rise, with an axe on the chopping block, and Feston's there, and he's gathering up the split halves of the wood. And he stood there for a moment just watching them, and then he just says "Ma," and then she looks and she goes, "Oh, you're back." He goes, "Yep," and he walks over to her, and he just hugged her, right?
Oh, it's so sweet.
He hugged her, and she put her head on his shoulder, and he just like did not want to let go. And then he broke away, blinking back tears, you could say, sniffing back tears, and he goes, "I'm sorry," because he looks down at his cloak, which is her cloak, and it's all bloodied and torn and muddied. He goes, "I'm sorry, it got ruined," and she goes, "It's just a bit of cloth." And then he ruffles Feston's hair. He goes, "You doing okay?" His voice keeps cracking, and he's like, "I'm fine. Did you get yourself a name?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." And he goes, "What is it?" And he doesn't even say. He just says, "Doesn't matter." "How's Wendon?" And Beck says, "It's the same. You weren't gone more than a few days, but it felt like years to him, right?" And it's when you have such a huge, like as you say, paradigm shift in your perspective. Wartime changes you. And he says, "I guess I was gone long enough." And she asks him what happened, and he goes, he doesn't really want to talk about it. And she goes, "Oh, your father talked about nothing else." And then he looks at her and he goes, "If there's one thing that I learned, it's that I'm not my father." And she says, "Good, that's good." She's happy that he's here. She doesn't have the words to tell him how happy she is. And
So
she asks,
sweet, isn't it?
yeah, right. And she asks him if
Lovely
he's
little
hungry.
exchange.
Yeah, and she asks him if he's hungry. He's like, "Yep, I could eat." And then
The most mom shit ever.
right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then Feston's gonna go get the fire lit. She asks if he's coming in, but he's like he might stay out here just a minute or two, just to split a log, right? She goes okay. Oh, and he gives her his sword, his father's sword, Shama Heartless's sword, and he goes, "Put this away anywhere where I don't have to look at it." And then she looks at him after she takes the sword, and she goes, "Seems like good things can come back from the wars." And he
Oh,
says that the coming back is the only good thing that he could see. So he grabs the axe, he hefts it, and it feels good, and he splits a log, and he's like, he was made to chop logs, not to fight, and he feels like that made him lucky, luckier than Reft, Stoddard, Brait, Droft, Weirin of Bleh, Black Dow even, and he just kept working that axe, and he just closed his eyes for a moment, took it all in, the smells, the sights, and everything when he opened his eyes, and he couldn't believe that he used to hate this place. Didn't seem so bad now. Didn't seem so bad at all. End of chapter, boys. How do you rate it?
Oh my boys, do you not reckon this is actually a happy ending? What's wrong with
Yeah.
Joe? He's getting soft.
He's getting soft in his old age.
I was expecting some bandits to sweep through it and kill them all.
Or like a nearby tree just collapses and kills Beck.
yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's obviously very heartwarming, and this is probably the best ending in a first law book altogether, or maybe even in a Joe Abercrombie book.
Best character ending, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Happiest.
Yeah, right? I would think so. You're right, I think, actually.
And again, it's another great ending to this character's arc, and we never see him again, so I hope he does well. And I'm
Yeah.
going to give it a just a 5 because it's short.
Yeah, Harrison?
I think I'm gonna give it a 6 and a knuckle
Oh, shit.
because I think that it is very cool that this young guy absolutely avoided the northern trap of that every other character in the north are like, if only he's like the opposite of Craw,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. I love that so much. Like
He didn't
is
need to be there for so long, right?
which this sounds counterproductive, but like in my mind, yes, that the Red Three Trees, good guy, straight edge. Craw, yeah, he's relatively speaking in the comparison of the North, yeah, he's somewhat a straight edge. He's a fine guy, but Beck is truly a straight edge because he recognized what he was cut out to, what he was cut out for. He didn't want bloodshed. He recognized it was too much. He quit after he had the experience. He learned. He regretted. He found peace, and he appreciated what was there. And I think like everybody else in the entire Northern Campaign, even like Wonderful, she was away from home for so long she doesn't even know what happened to her family because she got caught up, doing whatever, feeling like she can't go back, feeling ashamed. Beck felt ashamed. He learned his lesson. He went back home, and he doesn't hate anybody for it. And I think it is it's a really good character ending, and it's this isn't spoiling anything. We don't see Beck ever again, and I think that's really nice. I think that Joe did a really good job at showing these different aspects of war. It's not all gritty and terrible. He came back, and he's better for it. And I think that's great. I think it's really well done.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just a tiny little ending note here.
I'm gonna give it a 5. Really short chapter, but it is a very sweet chapter. It's very nice to see, Beck getting the happiest ending that we can imagine anybody in the First Law getting one. And I mean, he's matured an immense amount in the span of like 3-4 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really nice to see. And like that's the old adage, war is hell, right? And there's some that become addicted to it. Maybe they're mired in it. They say they can't see a way out, or maybe they are truly stuck. You never know.
Yeah.
Like Tunney could leave at any time. Crawl could have left at any time. Beck is like, fuck this. I am out. This sucks.
He's made the good decision where everyone else is just stuck in their pattern,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly
And the
right.
fact that he did that as a young kid, right? What is he like in 17, 15, something like that? Good for him. Really, good
Yes.
for him. Good for him. So I'll give it a 5 because it's short. But if it was longer, I probably would have given it a higher score. But 5 out of 9 fingers. So we'll move on to our next segment, which is our character spot. Boys, who are we highlighting today?
Well, it's got to be Sergeant Forrest, hasn't it?
Forrest.
Well, I suggested Mistress Worth, but I was shot down because people
You know
just
what?
hate women.
We could have also highlighted Yoke. You know what? All of them.
Oh. The fact that Tunney even got Leader Ligon's mom's name right, or at least his name right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously one of those things where somebody sat at home waiting for these people to come home and they're dead. And it's only probably been a couple of weeks since they went off because they were so fresh and the union doesn't do training. It's that's miserable. But at least she got glowing, well, not a recommendation, but a nice lie to tell herself about how he did in the army.
Yeah, because God forbid she find out that her son got shot while taking a shit.
Yeah, God. Or drowned in a bog.
or murdered behind his own lines.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mistress Worth, we literally didn't know you.
But Sergeant Forrest.
We should talk about Sergeant Forrest. Obviously, this is the character spot for him.
Sorry. Sergeant Forrest has popped up a couple times. I like how he mentioned Wes, because he Wes knew him in the first trilogy. I started a reread through with a friend of mine, and Forrest pops up in he's in the first quarter of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's just some random soldier, and I was like, look at this peasant.
His dirty commoner.
Yeah.
Why did you talk to him like that?
And I think it's cool how Joe's able to tie these characters into the series. And I don't think it's spoilers to say Forrest does play a more significant role in the next trilogy, and I think that's super cool how we get this escalation, and Forrest isn't all depressed or terrible. He's same pretty good happy lucky guy. He's still a sergeant. He's just a career soldier. He's got this relationship with Tunney, which gives him a bit more of a dynamic that Forrest has. Forrest has followed the rules. He's a good soldier. In fact, I would say Forrest may be the best, just straight up Union soldier. He's a straight edge,
He's
but
a
for the
straight. He's like
for the
Core
Union
for
side.
the
Yeah,
Union. Yeah.
yeah. Except he's. But yeah, I don't think he's. You don't think he wallows like it seems like.
No, he
Praga.
doesn't. He's I mean, at least not externally. We might get a PFE
Yeah.
chapter at some point, but no, you're absolutely right. He just does his job so well, and obviously, I think Sergeant is one of the. It's a big deal that West gets made a major, isn't it? So
Yeah.
a sergeant is pretty high up for a commoner at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We know in the Union that all of the higher officers all buy the way in.
It's all about who you know and what you spend.
Exactly. So it's good that he gets this because I'm sure he was a corporal in Last Argument of the Kings when he's hunting the Gurkish with Pharaoh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So he's come a reasonably long way. I know it's been 10 years, but fucking hell.
Well, I think that he's still the same. Like I think you're right. I think this is as high as he can go, but we'll see some things change.
Yeah.
Currently, this is as high as he.
But we like Sergeant Forrest. He's a cool guy. Has a good rapport with Tunney, even though they bicker. They're friends. I don't.
Yeah,
buy
they are friends. They're both like secretly smiling and doing this little back and forth banter.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh fucking
Yeah.
hell.
They're homies. They are homies for sure. But yeah, I mean, Sergeant Forrest, a real. He's emblematic of a meritocracy, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you'll get somewhere. I guess I don't know.
Get to be a sergeant for 10 years.
Oh well. Sergeant Forrest, we kind of knew ye.
we still know
Never,
you.
We look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So that's the end of that, and we'll move on to our third and final chapter read through, which is Everyone Serves. And this one we start off with we're with Calder, our boy, the new king of the Northmen, I guess, and he's talking to Cairn Ironhead. Asking him, he's like, yeah, you're standing with me? He's like, yeah, if there's still room. And Calder jokes that, oh, loyalists, red three trees, huh? And Ironhead's pretty, he's pretty astute. He goes, I'm not going to pretend you're stupid and say yes, but I know where my best interest lies, and it's at your heels. Also point out that loyalty is a dangerous foundation, tends to wash away in a storm. Self-interest stands in any weather. And Calder, he has to nod at that. He agrees, like, very sound principle. And he sees that Foss Deep is returning from wherever he was gone from. And then I like how he says, a man has to have some, huh, Deep? And Deep, Foss Deep is like, what? Somewhat. And he goes, principles. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm a big believer in them. My brother, too. And Shallow.
I like him with milk.
I like him with milk. I was like, what the fuck?
So dumb.
This is so absurd because there's not even a food that sounds like principles.
There's not anything.
There's nothing that sounds
Nothing.
The fuck are you talking about?
And I like how there's like an uncomfortable silence. And then Calder, he's just like, all right. Oh, and then he goes back to Ironhead and he says, last time that they talked that he'd stick with Blacked Owl, then he pissed on his boots. And he's like, these are the best bloody boots in the north a week ago. And Styrian leather. Now look at them. And Ironhead's like, I'm more than happy to buy you a new pair. Calder goes, make it two. He's like, sure, whatever. Maybe I'll get myself a pair. And then he says, just keep your men handy now. For now, we need to put on a good show for a little bit until the Union get bored of waiting and, slink off. And it shouldn't be long. And then Calder goes, and also get a gift for my wife, too. Something beautiful since my kids do soon. He says, yep, Chief. And then Calder says, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel too bad. Everyone serves someone. And Ironhead's like, yep, very true. Doesn't even like twitch or like anything. And Calder's a little disappointed because he wanted to see him sweat a little bit, but whatever. He said there'll be time for that later once the Union was gone. So he gave a lordly nod and smirked off, his two shadows trailing after him. So, he's Foss Deep and Shallow. And then, so he's thinking about he has Ricci on his side, Pale and Snow. He already had a chat with Wonderful, and so she had a chat with Dallas Carls, and their loyalty washed with the rainwater all right. 10 Ways men, most of them had drifted off, and Wide-Eye Hansel had kind of like made his own, like talked about self-interest with the rest, and they all came around. Iron-Headed Golden still hated each other too much to pose a threat, and stranger come knocking for reasons beyond Calder's thinking, was treating him like an old and honored friend. So he goes, luck. Some men have it, some don't. We'll see. And he goes, now time to see, how deep Glamour Golden's loyalty lies, or at least his self-interest. So they're walking down like a path or whatever in forest, and then the path, there's a fork in the road, and Deep takes the left, and Calder's like, wait, but Golden's camp is on the right, and Deep is like, yeah, you got a unchallenged grasp on your rights and lefts, which puts you a firm rung above my brother on the ladder of learning. And then I like how Shallow says that they look the same, which is what? But then Calder feels something prick in his back, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And then it took him a little moment to realize it's a knife.
Uh-oh.
These treacherous little bastards. Who could have seen that coming?
And Shallow, he prods him again. He goes, "We're going left," and it's like, "Oh no." And there's plenty of people about, fires, and some people are playing dice, a drunken group of thralls, but no one rushed to Calder's rescue because they didn't see anything to comment on, and if they had, they didn't give a shit. So I like how Calder's like, "Oh fuck, where are we going?" He goes, "You'll find out." And he goes, "Why?" "Because we'll get there." He goes, "No, why are you doing this?" And then
He's like, I've been betrayed.
they started busting out laughing. They were like, "Did you think we were watching you by accident at Call Ricci's camp?" And Shallow's like, "No, no, 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 no." And he goes, "Oh, fuck." And I like how Calder notes that they didn't even bother taking his sword away. They're like, "Oh, we're not threatened
He's
by
not
Calder at
threatened.
all. At all."
Totally fair.
So
as soon as they put the blade to his back, he's like, "Oh, it's almost game over, man. I can't believe this."
He doesn't even like call for help or anything. He's just like, I'll just meekly walk with you. It's fine.
And then he does think about maybe if he runs, but then Shallow, pricks him again. He's like, "No, no, no." He says, "No knee, no, no, no." What the?
No, 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 no.
There it is. There it is.
Oh, and then Calder's like, "Look, maybe we could come to an arrangement. I've got money, but then they say there's no pockets deep enough to outbid our employer. Your best bet is just to follow along like a good boy." "We're sorry about this, We have nothing but respect for you, just as we had nothing but respect for your father." And he goes, "What good is your sorry gonna do for me?" And Deep just goes, "A little less than none, but we always make a point of saying it." And I like how Shallow goes,
Oh.
he thinks that lends us class.
A noble air.
I was like, "Yeah, you're a right pair of fucking heroes." And then, so anyway, so they take him to this farmhouse. It's like set away from the camp, you could say. And it seems like this is where they've been burying mass graves, right? For all the
Yes.
bodies. There's a good number of pits, and they basically tell Calder, "Hey, go to this last one here that hasn't been filled in, and just stand right here at this edge." And Calder, he just starts pissing himself, and then he starts silently crying.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then all the bodies are naked, right? They were stripped of everything, and then he goes, "Look," but it's funny when he starts pissing himself. Deep goes, "Don't worry, that happens a lot," and he's talking like a father to a scared child. He goes, "You just stand right here." And then I like how Shallow goes, "That's left, right?" A little to that left, and then Deep goes, "That's right, fool." And Shallow's, "Fuck." So then, so then they go, "All right, so just stay here, just like stand here." And Calder's just staring down, and he's starting to cry. Dignity forgotten, doesn't matter much, and he's looking at the nearest body, with the great black wound in the back of his head. Who happened to be Black Dow. This hurts. I don't want to see his body.
Imagine though, like you already know they positioned that right there on purpose. You already know it.
Yeah, they've definitely been working out. Like, make sure he's like looking exactly like that. Yeah, okay, that's good. All right, no, we're gonna go grab him. We're ready.
That's exactly right.
And then he, he keeps crying. He's crying harder now, blubbing like a baby, because it's like that moment of death, and it's the most terrifying moment, right, for everybody. And he's like wondering when are they gonna do it, when are they gonna slit his throat or something, and then he hears like clinking and voices behind him, from the direction of the house, and then he hears somebody say, "Fish to start, excellent," and then Calder slowly, he's like, "What the fuck?" And he turns, and he sees that Deep and Shallow had vanished, right? And by the house, that old table. There was an old table there, and it had been covered with a cloth and set for dinner. And a man was unpacking dishes from a large basket, and another one was sitting in the chairs. And Calder's like, he couldn't believe the shit. The man sitting in the chair was Bias, first of the Magi.
Oh,
And he smiles, and he's like, "Oh, why, Prince Calder, pray join me," as if they just ran into each other. Calder wipes the snot from his face, right? And he goes and he sits down. So Baez, he cuts a small piece of fish out, plops it, uses his fork to plop it in his mouth, chews, and he's like, "So, the white flow shall remain the northern boundary of England." And Calder's just like, and he kind of like blinks and then he nods. And then he says, and then Byers goes, "The land between the White Flow and the Cusk, including the city of Ufrith, shall come under the governorship of the Dogman. It shall become a protectorate of the Union with 6 representatives of the Open Council." Calder nods again. And then he goes, "And the rest of the north, as far as the Krina, is yours. Beyond the Krina, it belongs to stranger come knocking." And Calder just, yes. And then Bias goes, "You don't need time to chew it over." Uh, no. He says, and then he goes, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Good. This is much better." And then Yoru is like, "A very great improvement."
We must have known that Vyas was going to have something to do with this. He's got his fingers in many pies, and he does not be slighted without some revenge.
That is a question, though. Did you guys think that Bias was going to be like in charge, like knowing what's going on, have everything under control to this degree? Did you guys suspect that when you first read it?
we kind of know that he's always had dealings with Bethold, and then obviously he controls the Union as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only reason why they're here in the first place is because Dow isn't towing the line.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I would think Bias is kind of very aware of what's going on. He's always got plots. He's always plotting. He's always manipulating. He's got pieces moving. The guy's playing, 6D chess, while everyone else is playing fetch. So, and so then it's funny how Bias is eating and everything, and then Calder notes that the servant has a smirk on his face that's very much like Calder's, and he's like, he enjoyed seeing it on another man about as much as he might have enjoyed seeing another man fuck his wife. Which I thought was great.
That is a good line.
And then Yoru, he swaps, he takes Bias's empty plate with the new one, and he opens it with a flourish, and it's, a steak, and Bias is like, the meat. And he goes, "Fish is very well, but dinner hasn't really started until you serve something that bleeds."
Quite bloodthirsty, isn't it?
Oh, boy. You want to get it out now. You just want to get it out now. Get it out now. Go ahead.
No, just go and watch the video. It's the theory that Vyas is an eater in this scene. So just go and watch that. We don't need to rehash it here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then
maybe.
I like how Calder here, he notes that Yoru looks like irritatingly familiar. Like if he's seen him once before, maybe, has he visited his father once as in a fine cloak, or at Ironhead's fire, or the shoulders stranger come knocking. Like there's something very familiar about it. Do we know? Do we have an idea?
I don't think at the time we see it. The classic line is either the curly hair or the 2 different colored eyes, one blue and one green. But I don't think Calder specifically thinks that about anybody through the book. It's just now that he's kind of looking back and thinking that person looks a bit dodgy, a bit familiar, But Harrison, do you want to bring up the other times that we've seen some things about Yoru throughout this book?
So I do like how we've this whole scene here. I don't think we're conveying it the best. Is very creepy. He sees all these dead bodies. He sees all this gore. He thinks he's about to die, and then Bias is super comfortable, casual,
Mhm.
eating, talking about consuming. He
power
gives,
play.
yeah, it's absolutely power play, and like it's like I think a lot of people may think it's like over the top, but this is how Bias's whole thing, intimidation of people weak, so he can manipulate them to do what he wants. If he can't manipulate you, he'll just eliminate you. It's like his whole thing, um, and because of that, because he has to have everything set up, he has to have all this knowledge, and since he's right here, he has Yoru Sulfur do it, and we know that Yoru Sulfur was running around in the first trilogy as well, doing a whole bunch of sneaky shit, transforming, and I like the idea that throughout the books, this creepy feeling that Yoru Sulfur is already like a cameo in every book, but I like
Mhm.
this idea that he's even more so than we're realizing.
Right.
He pops up everywhere in between, manipulating tiny little events on Bai's behalf. It makes you. It's a little unsettling. And one of my scenes that I don't know, like honestly, it was until this read through that I actually realized, oh my god, that's what it's for. Is earlier in the book after the battle on the bridge, whenever Gorse beats Scale, that like I think it's not even the same at the very next chapter. I think it's a chapter after that.
Mhm.
Gorse is up on the hill, and after the fight or before the fight or whatever, and he's looking down. And he sees Yuri Sulfur walking up, and he's covered in water, soaking wet. And Gorse, or maybe it was Finnery. Finnery remarks that it looks like he just gone for a swim.
Mhm.
Obviously, as we see here,
We'll see in a bit.
yeah, we'll see that basically that Baez says, "Hey, do all these things, and I'll give you a reward, and that will be your brother. I'll give you your brother back,"
Mhm.
which tells us that Yuri
Scale
Sulfur. Baez was sitting up on the hill. It's like, "Hey, isn't that Scale?
5.
Yoru,
Yoru,
go
go
fetch
get
him
him.
for me."
That is the funniest. And Yoru's probably like, "Yes, sir," like just cheery as ever.
Yes,
And
exactly
I
right.
wonder if he
No doubt.
ever has like a "fuck my boss" kind of thought, you know?
Yoru? No. He
Nah.
believes
He's just
in what he does.
waiting for Baez to die. Like, oh, it's gonna be me next. I'm gonna be first on the major.
climbing the corporate ladder.
And so, yeah, I mean, with this conversation is like, Baez is just, enjoying his food, and he talks about how he has to admit that he did not entirely enjoy the tenor of their last conversation, and instead it reminded him somewhat of Bethod. And he's like, that's a very small compliment and a very large warning. For many years they had an agreement, an understanding, and then Calder says, well, some good it did him. And then Bias goes, how short your family's memory. Indeed, it did. He had gifts from me and all manner of help, wise counsel, and he thrived. Right? From piss pot chieftain to king of the Northmen, forged a nation where there were only squabbling peasants and pig shit. But he became arrogant and forgot the debts he owed and sent his puffed up sons to make demands of me. And then he repeats this demands of me. And then it's like
Of me.
that force of will that Harrison talks about. And like Calder's just like, gulp.
Which is cool because in the I just read this in the first trilogy, whenever Calder is go up there demanding that he goes to see his dad in Carleon, he's like, "You demand of me? Of me?" Same phrasing, same line, same it's awesome that Pacey and Joe go back to that. And you already know that to me exactly what Calder's thinking, like, "Oh no, not again. I don't want to get choked out."
Mhm. And then he says that Bias continues on that Bethod turned his back on our friendship, and then his allies fell away, and all his great achievements withered, and he died in blood and was buried in unmarked grave. There's a lesson there. And so he has high hopes that, Calder will learn from his mistakes and remember what Calder owes him. And then Calder goes, but I didn't take anything from you. And then Bias goes, have you not? He goes, you will never know or understand the many ways in which I have interceded on your behalf. And then Yoru, he interrupts. He goes, the account is lengthy, lengthy. And I like how Baez goes, do you suppose things run your way because you think yourself charming or cunning or uncommonly lucky? And then Calder had, in fact, thought exactly that.
I mean, he was literally thinking about that in like a couple of
He
pages
really
ago.
was,
It's like,
yeah.
man, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, just luck. Some people have it, some don't. Turns out, no, that's not the case. He goes, was it charm that saved you from Ricci's assassins at his weapon take, or the two colorful Northmen I sent to watch over you? Was it cunning that saved you in the battle, or my instructions to Broad 10 ways that he should keep you from harm? He goes, what? 10 ways? He goes, yeah. Friends and enemies can sometimes be difficult to tell apart. He apparently told him to act like Black Dow's man, and he perhaps was too good an actor. And then I like how he goes, I heard he died, and Calder goes, it happens. And then Baez says, not to you, but didn't say yet, but it was there, you know? He goes, even though you faced Black Dow in a duel to the death. And was it luck that tipped the balance towards you when the protector of the North lay dead? Or was it my old friend, stranger come knocking? And then Calder's like, what the fuck? He's your man too? And Baez is just like, yeah, I knew him when he was still called Pip. Pip, of all things.
I love that.
He goes, I wouldn't say his that name to his face though. And he goes, he wants to bring civilization to the Fens, which I guess is the name for the savages east of the Krynna. And he goes, but stranger come knocking, fought for the Union. Why not just fought for Black Dow? Why not have him fight for the Union? You could have won on the second morning. And apparently, Baez goes, he was not content with my first offer. He demonstrated his value, and so I made a better one. And then he goes, the Calder goes, so wait, this is all a disagreement over prices? And then Baez goes, just what do you think a war is?
Ooh.
It was just, wow, nice.
Yeah.
And then Baez says, there are many others who have debts. And then Calder says, call shivers. And Yoru goes, nope, his intervention was a happy accident. And this is like, oh, without him, then Dow would have just torn him apart. And Baez says, yep, I mean, good planning does not prevent accidents. It allows for them. Make sure that every accident is a happy one. So he's not so careless to make only one bet. But he does admit that Calder's his preference because he's no hero. He likes that. He sees what men are. He has his father's cunning, ambition, and ruthlessness, but not his pride. And then Calder just kind of goes, well, pride always kind of struck me as a waste of effort. Everyone serves. And then Baez says, keep that in mind and you will prosper. Forget it. Well, he just reminds him about that pit of the corpses. He says, always. Go ahead.
Also puts a piece of meat into his mouth and chewed it, which seems like a threat to me,
Yeah.
Power play. He's just hungry.
Baez loves food. He loves food. He loves tea. He loves the finer things in life.
He likes to just eat in front of people, especially when he's bitching them down, because he wants them to see that there's nothing. He can eat comfortably in front of them, and there's no threat.
Surrounded by bodies.
Because if you think about eating, is like a vulnerable act, right? You're focused on one thing, your back's turned, all that stuff. He's just not even concerned. The only person to ever have done something to him while he was sitting down was Pharaoh, who cracked him right in the face. So, but he tells Calder to just keep that pit of corpses always in the back of his mind. Start and end every day there. That feeling he had, that helplessness, the regret, the fear, all of that, and you will, you'll be just fine. And if you forget it, you'll find yourself once again staring into your own grave with less happy results. You need only defy me. And then Calder says that he spent the last 10 years kneeling to one man or another. My knees bend very easily. And then Baez is like, yeah, that makes me happy. You can't imagine how many conversations I've had with stiff-kneed men. He doesn't have the slightest patience for them, but he can be generous to those who see reason. He says there come a point where he'll send someone requesting favors. Hope he doesn't disappoint him. And Calder goes, what kind of favors? He goes, the sort that will prevent you from ever again being taken down the wrong path with men by night. By men with. He goes, those kind of favors, I'm always happy to grant. and then Baez says, good. And in return, you'll have gold. He's like, gold? That's what a magi gives? He goes, what were you expecting? A magic cod piece? He goes, gold is everything and anything. Power, love, safety, sword, and shield together. There is no greater gift. But he does have another, as it happens, and this is what Harrison was alluding to earlier, your brother's life. And Calder's like, what? Scale's dead. And he goes, nope, he lost his right hand at the bridge, but he lives. The Union are releasing all prisoners as a gesture of goodwill. You can collect the pinhead at midday tomorrow. And then Calder's like, oh, what do I do with him? And Baez is like, I don't know, it's your gift, but you don't get to be king without making some sacrifices. You do want to be king, don't you? And he's like, oh, yes. So, and then Bias stands up and he goes, well, an elder brother is a dreadful encumbrance, which is like, uh-oh, that's true. And then I like how Calder, I want to talk about that in a moment, but Calder says, have you eaten here within a long piss of a mass grave just to show me how ruthless you are? Which is exactly what Baez did. But he goes, what? No, not everything has to have a sinister motive. I ate here because I was hungry. Graves mean nothing to me either way. And I like how Calder's like, Jesus Christ, knives, threats, bribes, war. What kind of fucking wizard are you? He goes, the kind you obey.
And the Pacey does it such a good job. He's like, the kind you obey. He's like very like, you better fucking listen to me, Calder. Like, it's great.
Yeah, and Yoru goes to take away Calder's plate, but Calder's like, no, wait, I might get hungry later. And then Baez is like, see, what did I tell you, Yoru? He's a stronger stomach than you would think. For now, the North is in safe hands. And then, they walk away, and Calder, says, where's dessert? And the servant looks at him, smiles, and says, Black Dow has it. And then they leave. While Calder is just there to sit with all of those feelings of the last, 5-10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
Jeffrey, how do you rate it?
Yeah, Jeff.
I'll give it an 8 out of 9 fingers. I really like this chapter. It's very good. The illusion that Calder is so cunning, so charming, all that stuff is shattered. That a lot of it is just, it was done for him.
Yeah.
Because Baez always wants to have like a representative, an avatar, if you will, of his own, right? And for him, it was going to be Calder, because Dow was too, entrenched with Khalul and Ishri. And yeah, it was well done. We saw Calder's arrogance in his, dealings with Ironhead and his plans for Golden or whatever. And then just immediate detour from with Deep and Shallow. And then we see we all like, when I first time I read this, I thought he might have died. He was going to die. I was like, oh shit. But then I was like, wait, but there's a bunch of pages. Apparently not. And then we see it's fucking Baez. And Baez, he literally, all he does in the beginning of that conversation, and I checked this out, he repeats word for word what he was saying in terms of negotiating the terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't change it up or anything, word for word. And then
he doesn't like concede anything. He's just like, no, this is what you're gonna do. That's it. And even scale. Well, he might have got some gold out of it by defying him in the first place, but unless Bias was going to approach him afterwards anyway, you never know.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
But
that's the thing I like about this a lot too, right? Like Bias says, "Don't you realize I did this and I did this, and don't you realize I did this and that?" And Baez is a very good manipulator, easy liar. I totally think that Baez was mostly like had some ideas and some plans, but I think Baez, as we've seen before, is more like he's got all these little plans. He aids where he can, but he can't plan for everything. But at the end of everything, he always acts like he accounts for everything because he's trying to intimidate somebody or convince somebody. It's all part of his plan. And Baez is no doubt a genius when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I do like the idea that some of the stuff he just fucking makes up on the spot or takes credit for, even if he hasn't done it. Now, I know you're thinking, like, well, he didn't take credit for Shivers. No, but Shivers is still alive and could contradict him. He doesn't want to, there's no point there. But I think there is certain things that he says that just like I knew him whenever he was Pip. How do we know that he did Baez actually help him all the way there, all the way up in the Krena? Really, did he though? He might have met him, but he's gonna act like he took credit for rising him up to power. But we don't know that, and so because we don't know that for sure, then Baez is gonna take credit for it because Calder doesn't know, and he's doing it. He's playing every card he can to be as intimidating, as in control as possible, and I think it's brilliant. So I'm going to give it an 8 as well.
Okay. George, give your score. So I want to talk about Harrison.
Okay, I'll go for an 8 as well.
Yeah, trifecta. Look at that.
It's a great twist, and obviously I think this is something we should have seen coming because it's just the same thing that happens at the end of the first Lord trilogy.
Yes.
It's interesting that Baez does a lot of things for Calder that he also did for Giselle, and also kind of brings him down in the same way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's done this before. He's done it with Giselle. I could easily believe that he did it with Stranger Come Knocking. He's doing it now with Calder. I mean, I could see like maybe he might, stretch the truth here and there. But the thing about Baez is like, why does he has no reason to lie? Snap of his fingers, people die. You know what I'm saying? He just wants people to do what he wants them to do, and he'll be honest about it. He'll be honest. He'll be like, "What did you expect? Anything less? Like what?" You know, he
Yeah.
expects people to be smart. So I do understand where you're coming from, where you like the idea that he kind of he lies, and I could see that maybe. But
think
I
he's
think a lot.
stretched.
I
He
think
does definitely stretch the truth a little
He
bit.
does,
He even says that he's a liar. Like
Yeah.
that's what he does.
well,
Yes.
I don't think he outright lies though. I think he just like omits things.
Right.
I mean,
But
I could easily see, just going back to the first fucking trilogy, but I could easily see Baez making up the whole thing about buying him from a whorehouse.
right. That's
Like
what I mean.
his
How would
his
we know?
actual origin that he's touted to everyone might be true, but to bring Giselle down a bit, he's just going to tell him that a lie.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Right.
very well.
Because there's so many different factors that play into things. And I think Baez doesn't lie like initially, but whenever starts getting resistance and he feels like he needs to twist it a bit more, I think he'll just absorb details that he knows people don't care about. Like, oh well, you bought from a whorehouse. I bought you from a whorehouse. Can you believe it? Why did he add that on at the end?
Because just insult him,
Yeah, just to install. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
It's like,
I think.
and
I think. Go ahead.
And I just got through that little segment in the first trilogy as well. Whenever Bethod and Karib and Scale go to see Baez, and Baez kind of does the same thing there. He's like, well, or he's doing it to get information to put pressure on. He lies that he's going to join them and just to hear what his plan is. And then after that, then he's like, well, I helped you all these times, and Bethod's like, I mean, yeah, but like, some of that shit doesn't really count. Why are you lording it over me?
And I think that's it. Like Baez has learned his lesson from Bethod there, where he was sort of a bit laissez-faire about it, and now he's like directly saying, "No, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill you."
Yeah.
But I think it's I think Baez is just brilliant, and
Yeah, I mean, I think just to me, I think it's more impressive, more showcasing of his just the absolute gulf of, I guess you could say, power and influence, that he doesn't lie, really. That he's just pretty like brutally honest, and that just makes him that much more ruthless. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's
I
just
think to people he respects, he would never lie, but people he does not respect, he does lie, just to convince him to do what he wants because he knows he can get away with it because he doesn't
like
respect
you said,
them.
the biggest equalizer is the gold, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I just think that Baez lies a lot, and I definitely think he stretches the truth.
okay, all right. Well, we can agree to disagree, and we can still be friends. So that's the end of that chapter. And thanks for the rating, boys.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support really does mean a lot.
Join us next week as we finish up the heroes with Just Desserts, Black Calder, and Retired.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media. Shoot us an email at circletheworldpodcast@gmail.com, and we have a website.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
The kind you obey.